The Sydney Opera House. Could you use it as a memory palace? Well, yes, of course you could, but there are some ins and outs to using what you might think of as mega memory palaces, and sometimes it's actually quite unreasonable to do so. So we'll talk about that and more coming right up. Hey there, this is Anthony Metivier from magneticmemorymethod.com, where we help mature learners of any age unlock the full powers of their memory through the memory palace technique, so you can learn faster, so that your brain works better, is humming along at 1,000 miles an hour, but in the right direction, because it doesn't matter how fast you go if you're not going in the right direction. And I've chosen this little sort of ugly place right here because I just found some cool memory tools in the form of this building and some dudes hanging from the building to clean the windows or repair the windows, whatever it is that they happen to be doing there. So if you like this kind of information about improving your memory and using memory palaces, hit the thumbs up, get subscribed to this channel if you aren't already, and let's go. So I just asked my wife how to say opera house in Chinese, and she said Sydney Ge Ju Yuan. And what I did is I took the album from Sonic Youth called Goo, and then I took Chewbacca, and then I took the UN building, which I happen to have seen in my own eyes, to begin to weave this into space. Not just any space, but the space where the word exists, and to use some helpers. Now, down there, I saw a MANOWAR sign, and so MANOWAR happens to be a band that I think is pretty hilarious and fun, so I get them involved, and now using spatial memory, in combination with where I am and the sound and the meaning of the word, I can put a gun, I can put Chewbacca, and the UN building. So gun, Ge, Chu, UN. And I gotta ask her, is this the correct pronunciation? And then I'll ask her later what the tones are. Then using the major method, I'll slap those tones onto the canvas of this memory palace, and the magnetic imagery will be amplified by adding the major method to remember the tones, and then it's just a matter of revisiting it a sufficient number of times to get it into long-term memory. And so it's pretty cool that these three people happen to be here. Now this is pretty compressed, pretty tight, and that is really part of the secret of getting the most out of the memory palace, is not trying to have it all, not humming and hawing about, well, do I have enough space in my memory palace and so forth, and waiting to get started, but rather just using spatial memory and starting to understand how that it works in combination with magnetic imagery, and that you can use small spaces to get a big bang for your buck. Now, I can go around here all day long and chart out a massive memory palace, but it's always going to sort of come back to the same thing, which is, am I using the larger memory palace with direct focus and concentration on its smaller parts in order to actually get the stuff into long-term memory as quickly as possible? Because if not, then the bigger the memory palace is, then the more of a deviation from the actual practice it is, and the more of a interruption it is, or an interference with actually using the larger memory palace. So the thing about mega memory palaces is that you can make them, but you've got to be really, really careful that you're not just impeding your own progress because you're trying to have it all. Less is really more with the memory palace technique, except for the magical equation of actually having lots and lots of memory palaces, because the more memory palaces you create, the more you unlock the powers of your spatial memory. And this is really, really important, because when you wonder why some of the memory competitors and memory people can create imagery so fast and then use it fast enough to get it into long-term memory with a minimum amount of repetition, a sufficient amount of repetition, better said, it's because they are using spatial memory to a sufficient degree. And the more that you unlock spatial memory, the more you're going to have access to what? You're going to have access to autobiographical memory, semantic memory, procedural memory, episodic memory, and so forth. So what is an example of that? Well, MANOWAR is a band. That gives me a lot of stories, it gives me a lot of imagery, it gives me a lot of sounds to tap into, it gives me a lot of characters and people to work with, it gives me a lot of memories to work with, because we listened to MANOWAR a lot when I was in a band, and we were traveling around, going from town to town, setting up our bands, and we're just listening and listening and listening to this band. So just by thinking about MANOWAR, I'm unlocking all this memory that exists in my head, and it's essentially creating this magnetic effect, so that when I then want to add something, I can think about goo, right? And I can think about a gun maybe in the hands of the MANOWAR people who are now then interacting with Sonic Youth and the album Goo. These are all relative, related sounds, not a one-to-one correspondence. I rarely push for one-to-one correspondences unless they're immediate. I just work with things and then I start to layer. And then we can have Chewbacca. Maybe Chewbacca has a dreidel or something, so I think of the sound of like a Jewish tradition sort of thing, so Chew and Jew, and then UN, right? Well, the UN building is very, very close there. And then I got to go and do, the due diligence of figuring out the tones, and then I need to put all this into a sentence. But it's all so quick and aided so quickly precisely because I'm actually thinking about spatial memory. So it's not just MANOWAR, but I'm thinking about being on tour with the band and so forth, and now I'm getting even more ideas for more memory palaces I've never used before from focusing on just a small portion of one memory palace and just seeing what's available there. Just seeing there's these 3 people there, so they become 3 stations that maybe they're one station or there are 3 stations in one station, doesn't matter. The whole point is that you use it magnetically, really focus on it, and then come back to it throughout the day. Use it in a sentence, read, write, speak, and listen. And my wife is here, we're going to chat about it and so forth, and then just do it again and again and again. And it will scale relative to your focus on how you create multiple memory palaces, how you designate the creation of those memory palaces through different categorical systems you can create for yourself, or you can follow models that I've made, and then you scale it by how you use it. So I would never use a large place like this strategically because it's just too diffuse, so to speak. There's just too many potential left, right, up, down kind of things to go. But for a one-off, and I can come back and think about it again and again, I can use maybe the tops of the spires, count them later, use Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever might be on Google to really unpack and unlock the potential of this sort of place. But I would use it for limited, small sets of information, and maybe I'm going to think about some words in Chinese related to opera that I don't already know, or related to music, or related to theaters or opera houses in general, and I can start to pack that out with more vocabulary that's related to the thing in and of itself in a strategic way. And there's a lot more to this that you can learn. So if you're interested in getting into the nitty-gritty and the finer details and really, clamping down on your memory palace technique, come visit me at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. We got the free course, the worksheets that help you make sure that you're creating multiple memory palaces based on principles that do not create more cognitive load than you need, so that you're being simple as possible, and that when you do scale, when you do increase the levels of challenge, which you want to do in order to continue to grow with this technique, that you're doing it with good guidance, good principles to follow, and that's all at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. And so if you like that, hit this thumbs up, get subscribed to this channel if you're not already, and until we have a chance to speak again, come get that free course at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. I'm going to go check out the rest of Sydney, build some more memory palaces, and be realistic about the ones that I use, and I'm going to use them right away, and just watch the environment for clues that could help unlock autobiographical memory, which leads to unlocking episodic memory, which leads to unlocking semantic memory and procedural memory and other layers of memory, but ultimately spatial memory. Because as Thales said, Megaston topos hapantagar kori, space is ultimate because it contains all things. And so far Sydney is ultimate because it is made of space. And in that space is all the potential that you could ever possibly need to unlock your memory, and that's as true of living in the Sahara Desert as it is in living in the biggest megalopolis city in the world. It all comes down to your strategy, your technique, and how consistent you use it. So show up to the art, the craft, the science of memory, and it will serve you well. And I'd love to help you over at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Thanks again, and until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic.